So we're starting off our third panel. This is the essential building blocks of a profitable cannabis cultivation. Without further ado.
Hi everyone, welcome to our discussion on cultivation. My name is Josh Hoffman. Here with a really great panel of folks that's going to be able to, one, give you some good information, and then two, answer any questions at the end. So we want to make sure if you've got questions, hold them to the end. As the last panel said, cultivation is essential to cannabis. It's where it all starts, and if you don't have a profitable or well-run cultivation facility, you're probably not going to be profitable down the line. With vertical being a major factor, you have to be good at all aspects of the industry, and so we've got different folks from different aspects of that cultivation part of the industry to help answer those questions and tell you about their experience. So I'm going to go through. We're going to go person to person and see. Feel free to jump in on any of the questions. I think they're all applicable. And seeing as that we've got plant touching, financing, and building experience up here, it would be good to get those perspectives as we go through. My name again. I'm Josh. I just got jumped into this, so I'm not on the board, but I am supposed to be here. So. The first question's one for everyone, and I think it's a good question seeing what's going on with our legal state here. So what impact may cannabis rescheduling have on the design of cultivation facilities and operations, preparing for regulations like FDA, DEA, and interstate commerce? Back in the day, everyone grew huge plants because you could only grow 6 of them. So you grew as big as you could, so you'd go to jail for the littlest amount of time. Now we can actually optimize for what's best for the plant. So how are those changes in law affecting how you're designing, building, or financing these facilities?
Yeah, I can start on that. So mainly for design, it's more segregated rooms, keeping pretty much all your flower rooms segregated from each other, more of a smaller scale instead of this huge room where if one room goes down, at least you have some backup rooms, meaning like mold or HVAC issues or that type of stuff. So with the regulations coming in place, you kind of want to get it more fine-tuned so that you can start repeating that crop over and over again instead of just, here's what we grew this time, have at it. This one, you know exactly what you're doing, everything's regulated, and then just pretty much copy, paste, and repeat.
Yeah. Would you mind explaining who you are and what you do in the industry?
Yeah. My name is Jeff Lair. I'm the Director of Architecture and Engineering for DAG Facilities, full design build firm. I've been in the industry for about 8 years now. I've worked on sites all over North America, about 200 sites or plus. I tell people ranging from the size of a gas station up to over 1 million square feet. Indoor, full indoor, greenhouses, vertically. So seen everything, and happy to be here.
Awesome. Let's go right down the line. Same question. How do you feel legalization is changing your aspect in cultivation?
So for me, I'm an investment banker with a group called Growthink, or GT Securities. So I'm definitely not an expert in the cultivation practices themselves, but the topic of the panel, the foundation blocks of a successful business. One of the key pieces is securing, quality capital. And so you think of my role as like an investment banker. If you're not familiar what role that might play, think of it like a realtor. They're helping set the furniture of the house. They're having the pictures, the website put up there, that liaison between you and the capital. So I come in and at the idea stage, and part of the idea stage and planning is like, hey, if we're going to overbuild or underbuild, you might seriously impact your cash flow and your runway. So really dialing in what your strategy and business planning is key. But I think I'd leave the specific of the designs to the experts here.
Do you see people looking for more financing, trying to open bigger facilities now that legalization is almost here? Or has that been the same size for the last few years?
I mean, so there's like the green rush of capital investment that really peaked and ended in 2020. So like since 2020, and I'm talking like when I say like sophisticated or institutional level capital, like guys who can write 10, 20, $30 million checks, that money is like pretty much sidelined. So strategies that I recommend is like really dialing in like your local network. So is there local realtors, landlords, high net worth guys, even local private equity and family offices? They'll take a peek at it, but the big players are definitely on the sidelines. So another strategy which you guys can probably elaborate is like position yourselves to get partnered with or get acquired by MSOs, because MSOs are leading investment, across the U.S. in terms of like equity dollars put into like new operations. So,
okay. Thank you, Logan. And we'll go down to Ian. And would you explain the same question? How do you think legalization is going to change how you're designing, cultivating, or building these facilities or running the facilities? But also, first, please introduce yourself and a little bit about your experience in the industry.
Morning, everybody. I'm Ian Justus. I lead all cultivation and research and development for Connected Alien Labs. I'm a controlled environment plant physiologist. I worked in the berry industry for about 10 years, so cut my teeth in scaled commercial ag innovations. And now I've been running cultivation and breeding programs for Connected for about 5 years. Are we talking about legalization or rescheduling?
Let's talk about, not the rescheduling because that's more federal. Let's talk about what's happening here in Florida as far as us having it going to adult use.
Yep. I mean, so I think everyone's mind is scale, right, in that timing. So it's going to open up a much wider customer base, so increased demand. So all of a sudden your new supply adjustments are going to change. And you're going to see like this inflation. So one of the big challenges, and a lot of CEOs were talking about the previous panel, is when do you as a business make that decision?
Yeah.
Are you all in on it passing right now?
Right.
Because you need to be, from a cultivation permitting standpoint, on just like doing a site plan, getting your permits, and doing a build is a long lead time.
What's the lead time typically?
It depends on what stage of the process you're at, but if you're going to build an indoor facility ground up, 2 years is optimistic, right? From like end to end, and like you're talking about first revenue dollar out of that asset, 2 to 3.
Yeah.
And so you can bet the market that you plan in is not the market you will be entering in that asset. So that's the same thing, like there's going to be this bubble of rec, and whoever can get there fastest, then it's just going to get to another competitive market like we've seen in every market.
Yeah.
But that's the story of farming for as long as time.
Right. Yeah, something that what happened in the Canadian market was, they knew they were going to get federal legalization, and they built the biggest facilities on planet Earth, and really couldn't do much with them. We saw the last panel talking about being a little bit more concurrent with their growth. Are you seeing any trends with concurrent, like how can companies either finance the concurrency, build to stay concurrent with their needs, but also be aware that they've got that 2-year lead time to get things going?
Something that I always talk about, master planning, kind of the biggest thing you can do. So whether you want a huge site, a small site, don't overbuild up front. Obviously you have to get everything down first, but get that master planning down so you know where your site will end up being. Find the property that has the power for expansions, long lead times, saying switch gears, all that type of stuff like that. Make sure you have enough power up front, your infrastructure's there, and then you can build for designing and expanding on the future. But build it where it doesn't affect your operations. You aren't stopping your operations to keep building. You can take down the next door, you're going to have the next thing going. But your master plan, meaning put the whole site on there, you can phase it out, understand your phasing, understand your budgets, and then move forward that way.
Same question. You're seeing, if it's a 2-year build time to get the capital together, you're going to have to get that capital together before you start laying down shovels. So there might even be a bigger lead time.
Lead time and runway is absolutely critical.
Yeah.
Especially in like a current state of how expensive capital is. The last thing you want to do, and like the nail in the coffin for so many companies, is like becoming like slaves to your free cash flow. So you have really bad debt, you have some bad partners, you don't have good supply with your operations or whatever that is. If you're not budgeting early and planning, if you're overly optimistic, things can get upside down really quick. So in terms of like budgeting and planning for that, it's absolutely crucial.
Awesome. All right, let me get back to some of these more specific questions that we have here. Let me go to Jeff here. So, you've designed over 200 cultivation facilities. You said from gas stations to huge things. What's a common element that people should be building towards so that they can scale when that moment approaches?
It's kind of part I was saying last time, like understanding your operations, your SOPs, make sure you have standards and all that stuff. Investors will tell you one thing, cultivators will tell you another thing, and then operations will tell you another one. A lot of people say, put more and more and more canopy in there equals more and more dollar signs.
Right.
But if you put too much canopy in there, now you ruin your operations, your maintenance may be at risk, and it might all be for naught. So if one thing goes down, it could affect your entire crop, all because you tried to maximize it too much, risking your airflow, your people doing too many tiers. It's backbreaking on a lot of employees, but people are like, oh, more, more, more. So you got to understand that. But the biggest one is understand get the SOP going, so you have your standard operating practice. So as you do grow, you are keeping up with that. This industry, as most people tell you, it's one of the largest turnover rates probably out there. So if you already have everything in place, what you're doing, when the next person comes in, they know exactly what you're doing, what you're designing for. So you don't want to cater just for one person, one individual, one group. Cater for the masses, in case there is that resale value as well too down the line.
Yeah.
So, but now you know that your site does work. I always call it like, consider it more of a machine than an actual facility.
Ian, that kind of going towards you, and similar idea, you've done a lot of R&D, you've done a lot of cultivation, and in order to prepare for the next market, you need to have things in R&D, you also need to have things in production. How do you balance the needs and expenses and focus that it takes to really do R&D right? Because it's hard if you're looking for new phenos and you're going through 100 plants to find that one. It's a lot of people power to make that happen. How do you balance those R&D needs, those commercial needs, with just good operations on your cultivation so that your consumers don't lose the value of the product that they've come to enjoy?
I think the first step has got to be alignment with the strategic needs of your business. That's the only way you can even begin to size it, know what questions you need to answer, and focus on what's going to make your business successful. Because there's like R&D doing it for the sake of doing R&D, and it's just like it's fun to ask questions and want to know. The most difficult part of the process is really, what is that question that's going to get us a meaningful answer that's going to affect the business in a meaningful way? And then am I organized enough to answer it? And it's once you can get through that and you have people that can just execute and be organized, it can just flow and it becomes part of the ecosystem, part of the DNA of your whole team. And that's the way you truly introgress it. And from my perspective, R&D is just an objective way to answer questions. That's all it is. Like, it doesn't need to be some super fancy, overdone academic process. And when it is, it's usually not very business minded.
Thinking about the business and thinking about the different products and the way that people consume cannabis, they're not just smoking, vaping flowers. They're doing tinctures, they're doing edibles, they're doing concentrates, they're doing dabs, they're doing all these different ways. Have you found that you've been able to optimize your cultivation for the specific product types and have it with Alien Labs or connected?
Yep. So we have like a true breeding program and pipeline, and so like a big part of that is like, what are your breeding objectives and what are you going to drive in terms of traits for plants, right? Like, what are we looking for? And rosin's a great example. Solventless extracted hash. It is like a very challenging trait of the plant itself. We're always looking for like top shelf premium flower. That's who Connected Alien really is and leads. But rosin's a very interesting product, and it's a very elusive trait at the biological level. So it's actually really hard to get consistent high yielding things out of that trait in particular. And then we've also found some trends for certain other types of extract. And then there's just kind of, in cannabis, we're really kind of breeding what we call as a chemotype, which is like, it's a bunch of chemical structure, so a cannabinoid profile and a terpenoid profile, and as well as other aromatic compounds, and those are the big impacts on those other kinds of products. Flower's got a lot of structure components to the actual trait, but then the other ones are a lot about the chemotype itself.
Have you encountered building rooms that are made specifically for oil pens, or rooms that are made specifically for rosin, or things that are made specifically for a product output that aside from flower?
So we'll definitely segregate the whole site, like I said, in operations, from your cultivation one side, your post-harvest, and then your manufacturing processing all to another side. As building out those sites, we do bring in, people who have expertise in that with their equipment, what their equipment needs are, sizing for what they're doing, and like I said, knowing what your output is going to be. So we'll go to certain people just for those things, but on the manufacturing side, we'll dedicate something just for that manufacturing, processing, vape pen, whatever you want to do. Dedicate just that one area. Because a lot of these sites too will have completely separate teams going on stuff. Like even different scrubs that work. The blue scrubs go this way, the red scrubs go this way. So it's all kind of just based into what the client's output is on that.
Okay. Yeah, what I was referring to is that, if you have a concentrate oil and you wait 65 days for the plant to mature, the amber is going to be really big in the trichomes. You're going to have a much darker cannabis concentrate. If you were to pull that on day 49, the amber hasn't set in, you still get all the strength of the THC, a little less terpene. And if that's going into like a distillate product, then that's going to distill really well because you're not going to be taking out lots of terpene. You're going to have a nice blonde, looking concentrate. Something we used to do on outdoors, we'd say this is going for oil, this one's going for flower, this one's going for concentrate, and pull, harvest, and fertigate accordingly. Have you seen a trend like that happen in any indoor facilities?
Not really on the indoor, on the greenhouses, definitely.
Yeah.
Just because we're just going to grow whatever the heck we can out there, and then bring that in for this. It's almost, this way you're not wasting anything, especially on greenhouses. It takes almost 2 years just to calibrate, a single bag on that, especially because you have different seasons, all that stuff. So that first couple harvests is going to be your, going that way.
Yeah.
I think an interesting thing that I've noticed too in terms of like thinking about scaling or how you want to grow, to me it seems in emerging markets, so states that are, just now rolling out licenses, there does seem to be a better opportunity for new companies to establish more of a premium brand. Not only because, there's a high barrier to entry, which, creates artificial demand, but it also creates artificial prices. And when you're thinking about scaling, future operations, I think that's when I've personally seen more stuff that's like more wholesale. Hey, we want to create oils out of this, but something interesting to look at when you're, looking at entering in a new market, especially if you want to develop a brand too. Like there's, intrinsic brand value that can be created if you can capture that. So if you're able to create a premium, product early, there's an opportunity. But the downside, as designers know, there's cost to that as well. Yeah. So balancing your decisions there is tricky.
Okay, so it sounds like what you're saying is founders should be considerate of the brand when building these things. What other considerations should founders have when looking to raise capital for their cultivation? And to anyone.
I'll hop on after you, Jeff. Good.
You can go first. I was still single.
So, for me, this space is so hard to raise capital, and so other considerations when raising capital is how due diligent are you? Have you turned over every single leaf? Have you instilled confidence in the investors that you've done the legwork? And cannabis already gets a bad rep, a bunch of potheads, right? It has a lazy, connotation. So, something I love doing is it's literally exhaustive and it seems over the top. But I have a 300-point checklist. It covers everything from your CEO succession plan to your marketing plan to your, tax situation, background, everything. It's meant to be over the top. Because it's already hard enough to secure capital. So why would we, not turn over every leaf? When we go to the investors, I have a data room that has, 100 documents in it, maybe a 90-page due diligence report. The old John Wooden quote, if you don't have time to do it right the first time, when are you going to have time to do it? You're probably not. So, I think, the cool thing about cannabis is, from my perspective, I just love networking. And the winners are able to network and find the right partners. So, I'm sure you guys have seen this a ton, some in a new state, New Jersey, or I had a Rhode Island or whatever, some guys think they're sitting on gold because they, got a license, or they have a facility that's in the zone, but it's hey, this isn't just having a piece of property, it's having the proper, facility. It's about securing, cheap quality capital. It's about, implementing the proper, grow techniques or whatever. So I think really having a holistic plan is absolutely critical when you're trying to raise capital.
Yeah, I think it's really underestimated how many decisions have to be made before you know anything, and there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
So if you take that philosophical mindset, it's you need to build in buffer and you need to plan for the future, and you need to plan for some amount of flexibility, but not too much. And you really need to know kind of what is your business and what do you want to sell, and then what is the most efficient way to make that, right? Especially we talked about product lines earlier and making custom rooms. I would really caution against that because you need to be pivoting and you need to think about what's the future of this product line's production system. And if your primary business is distillate and you're building high-tech indoor, I would highly advise you against that because that's not likely the direction of that path in the future. you know, and then I think the hardest part for every business is how do you size it? Because you need to know before you have it, and the market you enter with won't be the market you plan it with won't be the market you enter in with it. And it looks really good to have a lot of square foot with a high net profit per square foot in a spreadsheet, but then you've got to execute that vision. So is it too big? Can we actually sell this amount of product? And at what productivity will it actually yield?
The last panel had CEOs on, and one of them was saying that there's an oversupply happening across the board. How do you cultivate knowing there's an oversupply happening? Are there anything that you can do going into markets knowing that there isn't going to be concurrency in demand, especially as you have changing regulations over and over again?
I think it's the only thing you can count on.
Okay.
My past industry, I worked in the berry industry for many years. I saw it happen to every global market we went into. Amazing returns, those fast starters, and then everyone comes running for the money, and everyone's margins shrink. So if you can get efficient early, you weather the storm when people are making hay when the sun's shining, right? That heyday time, it comes and goes quickly, and it's going quicker than it ever has in every new cannabis market we've seen.
Yeah. Good point.
I was around a lot of really inspirational farming people, and it's like real simple logic. Lowest unit cost at highest quality wins long term. So it's like, how do you structure your business and like that part of your cultivation to drive that for extra success?
Awesome. Yeah, you keep on, your comments are right on the edge of you keep on hitting the wall on rescheduling interstate commerce. It feels like you would be excited for the opportunity to sell the product throughout the country. It also feels like there's a lot of financial impacts the second that you can grow it in California and sell it in New Jersey. How do you think that those change? We talked about this right at the beginning, but how do you think those changes for federal legalization would affect cannabis cultivation throughout the country?
It's a huge double-edged sword because have you structured your business to target that, or have you looked at what's right in front of you? Because I think it's really far off. I think it is very far off from being able to have these huge facilities centralized in interstate. That's like the last thing that's going to occur. And so a lot of people are you betting on infrastructure now to do that later? You better have a good plan for that depreciation and all that product and all that space. So it's very difficult to size that, and again, the lead time to size something up is also long. But it's just driving yourself to be efficient is the long-term thing for survival. Focusing on quality, focusing on getting your costs down is what makes any farmer successful over the long term.
I can tell you for a fact, if your business plan or business model, if a key component of that rests on some federal legalization opinion, you're not getting funded. So focus local. If you can build a local market, great. I think the federalization for me, that's future stuff. That's future diversification. That's future opportunities. If you can't articulate the small local, you're probably not in a position to get there.
You mentioned that you had a list of 300 things that you wanted to get checked to do it. Have you actually noticed statistically that the companies that fill those boxes get funded more than the ones that build the right relationships with the funding?
It's actually an amazing question that we didn't even prepare for. I'm glad you asked. I actually got this process from a guy in Las Vegas. So I got my start in Michigan. I was a part of a 4-man team, and the head, he owned a casino. He put up $200 million. So I called called an email to all 600 licensed facilities in Michigan between 2017 and 2020 saying, hey, I'm with XYZ. We're really looking for partnerships and acquisitions. And through doing that, I got an old fraternity brother of mine to buy this, what we thought was an awesome vertical location. We didn't know what we were doing, so we hired this advisor group. And he actually developed this system. He had a name for it. He had 330 checkpoints. So mine's a little different than his, but he ended up getting his IP acquired by US Capital Global. It's a pretty decent sized boutique investment bank, but the IP behind it was each point is worth 3 points. So it's 1,000 points you can get. And the companies that hit 920 points over his 10-year period of consulting 800 companies, that was the number that so definitely the more due diligent you are, whether you're really actually making any actionable change or whatever, just getting organized just helps. Starting a business is freaking hard. Get organized, and doing a huge due diligence checklist that covers everything from A to Z of your business, at least get you thinking about what are the variables you're not thinking about, what could go wrong, red flags here and there. So I would highly suggest doing extensive business planning and due diligence.
One thing that was mentioned a bit last time with the CO panel, and in the title, Essential Building Blocks of a Profitable Cultivation Business, you have to have the right team running the facility. I took over some facilities back in the good old days in California, and you would come into an animal house essentially, and you'd have to go everything from HR to getting the right people. What do you think is the right culture around cultivation, both from the folks, moving the products, to the folks in the management, to the folks financing and understanding it? What is a positive cannabis cultivation culture look like?
I think it's like everyone, all the sites I've been with, everyone's very tight knit. This community, it seems huge, but pretty much everyone knows each other, type style. So yeah, once you're working in it, you want to keep those people around. Like I said, it's a very, very, very high turnover rate in this whole industry. So make sure all your operations do interact with each other and not fully segregate from each other. Once you have that segregation, that's kind of where like everything goes off the rails on everything. So like you got to know on your cultivation side how much you're cultivating, so you know how much to manufacture. Your HR knows how many people to employ for each one of those things. So having, like I said, your SOPs, your operation, the proper planning in place, I think that'll kind of keep everything going. But once you have that one where it's, hey, we got a site, me and my friends grow in the basement, now we know what we're doing here.
Yeah. Once
you get to that scale, like I said, all hell breaks loose. No one knows what they're doing. And then that's why you see all these companies, it pretty much works for almost any business, but going out of business so quickly, just can't handle scale pretty much is the next one.
Same question, what's a positive cannabis cultivation culture that you've seen or that you
I can tell you the
for?
negative from the start.
Okay.
So for some reason, there's like a history of like investors like typically hate growers as like a person.
They do.
And it's funny because it's like the core of their business model. But
right.
I think it's because like they're just very passionate, maybe. Stereotypical. If you can remove the ego, like my favorite businesses I've worked with are those guys that are passionate, but like they're leaning on like the data. Like so, guys that are just data driven seems to help in my world.
That's an interesting observation. Yeah, there's a lot of ego in cultivating.
I think it's kind of dying out too. Like from my experiences and talking to guys who've been in the industry way longer than me, like it used to be much more of a trade secret. So it's like I got the best X, Y, Z. I got so there's a lot of ego and confidence there, but I think things are changing. Tech is huge, so if you can lean into that, there's some good stuff.
Yeah, no, I remember. I thought it was the biggest thing because I could grow 1.5 pounds out of 20 square feet, and now that's like the bottom. So it's funny how the innovation changes. Same question. What's a positive cannabis cultivation culture?
Of course, depends. To me, it's like, is it just, you're talking about just one farm? Or are you talking about a scaled network across geographies? Because those are two very different goals. Like just one scaled farm, you can have like a lot of eccentric personalities. As long as meeting the needs of the business, you can kind of make that work. And my previous job, I went 6 continents, met hundreds and hundreds of growers, and the best grower was never the academic. It never was.
Right.
Like in this field, you are cultivating and nurturing another organism, and you need to have a certain amount of empathy for that. And that is a little bit different than normal corporate business processes. And so I'm like the bridge between the business and those types of folks. And then it's about uniting those creative juices together rather than in competition. That like structurally on a philosophical team leadership is, I see a lot of business like, let's hedge them against each other. I'm like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Let's get them together, inclusive and sharing. Because they're all doing very similar things. That shared experience, those observations, those perspectives are everything to a scaled team.
Right.
And then that's what really, in the end, makes it flow from my experience is like, then people are collaborating when something's happening on one of my sites, the first thing my team members do is like, how can I help? And I saw the exact opposite in a lot of other like corporate farming situations is you just have these islands, they're doing the same thing, they won't talk to each other, they're non-collaborative.
Right.
And it is probably the reason investors hate it is like because like the people are abstract and the focus is abstract. And guess what? It's really hard to get good advice and tell you like there's not one real answer to every question.
Right.
There just isn't. So like that interpretation and that unknown makes all the business people very uneasy. So I'm always like kind of bridging that. I'm telling them like, what's objective and what isn't, what do we understand and what we don't, because we do not all understand it all.
Right.
And growers are just comfortable with that reality. And I think it's kind of abstract to a lot of business people.
Yeah. I agree with all those observations. So we're getting close to the end. I wanted to open up for any questions. These are experts. You've got lots of different types of expertise up here. So I don't want to just have everyone talking. So do we have any questions? I want to make sure we get them.
Question. Abroad, indoors and outdoors, it's very different areas. So I was just wondering, especially for Florida now, so what do you recommend?
So the question was, growing indoors and outdoors is very different. In Florida, what do you implement to overcome that, essentially? Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to make sure they understood. Everyone else could hear the question. Yeah. Okay.
You're on the right path.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, step one is, what do you want to make? What are you growing for? You got to be real honest with yourself about like, are you premium top shelf flower? Are you distillate, right? Flower. And so, cannabis, like any farm, like we're talking about building farms, and your farm can never be optimized unless the plants can be optimized. All the other operational downstream flows from their ability to thrive. And Florida is unique challenges all around. We grew a lot of strawberries and blueberries in Florida once upon a time, so I'm familiar with the outdoor climate as well as the indoor dynamics. And you got a couple main challenges from my perspective, and humidity is the top one. Humidity is there just for you kind of every day, and it is one of the biggest challenges to overcome in farming in general, because humidity takes a lot of energy to remove, right? And so, outdoor, it's like, hey, best of luck to you. Find some really good genetics and do something low end tier. Greenhouse, best of luck to you. From my perspective, to do a greenhouse right in Florida, you're gonna spend as much as you would on indoor. Because the things that greenhouses do not manage very well at all is humidity and nighttime temperatures. Right. Both of those take active cooling, HVAC systems, dehumidification, which most greenhouse designs do not encourage or have. And then when you do build them in, it becomes very, very costly. And you start to have, well, I need this, then I need that, then I need that. And then you start stacking everything on top of it. And the other thing about greenhouse, a lot of people think it's like I have a greenhouse now, I just set my thermostat and it goes. It requires very, very local design to what climate you have. Right? Because you're just modifying outside, so you got to be able to fight whatever Mother Nature throws at you. And so, obviously, this area is very hurricane prone, right? Thoughts go out to everyone that's struggling with that. Yeah, and so the number one Achilles heel in any controlled environment agriculture is power and electricity. And if you lose electricity, you don't have very much time. You'll lose your whole farm. So I'm going to spend some money. I would spend it so I'm ready for that reality, because it has already hit us multiple times in Florida. You need to have your electrical wired for a generator to be hooked up. I would advise you have a generator on contract and you get it out before the storm is going to hit, because at least in a hurricane you do have notice. And then because everyone's services are gone, you're going to be a low priority as much as you can do before the storm hits. But if you don't have that hookup wired, you're done. When you can lose power for an extended amount of time. And if you are in greenhouse, you need to abate humidity in an active way, and it's going to cost you a lot of money and a lot of electricity. So next phase would be getting really good genetic selection to deal with that. Cannabis has got a very high standard of production in terms of testing and requirements. So humidity just incurs fungal pathogens and mold, and that pressure is you're going to fight it every single day.
Let's say the goal is to have premium top shelf flowers. What do you think in order are the three most considerations in building from around that, whether it's an indoor facility, that you're going to factor in when you make major purchases?
Yep. So just so everyone knows, the question was, what are the three most important factors you're looking for in designing and building a cultivation facility if you're trying to grow top shelf premium flower?
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yep. So, and I'll answer Florida specific, perhaps. So, we design everything plant backwards. I really believe if you can efficiently optimize for the plant, that's where all your efficiencies are going to come downstream. Otherwise, you got to be wise in how you use your labor, et cetera, because labor is always your biggest cost. So first off, the ratios of the building. So how much dry to veg to flower space do you need based on the offset in which you plan to produce? And so the ratios are where I see, I'm like, I just don't understand what people were thinking on how are you going to flow? Because indoor, like, is my perspective, is the only way to get consistent quality, unless you have a very, very high-tech greenhouse and an amazing team, and it's very difficult to scale that management over space. Indoors easier, but there's still a lot of variables. So water removal rates, everyone underestimates. The veg and dry space, everyone underestimates, especially for premium. Like how you dry, cure, and where it's stored is very, very important. And you want to give yourself some buffer in those spaces, and people don't like to because they don't look at them as productive spaces. So I see that as a big trade-off in a lot of facilities. But again, it's like you're going to be doing that every day. Getting your ratios right really allows you to get your turns very regimented and very regular. Because again, it's not about yield per turn, it's about yield per square foot per year. It's right, like how big a harvest can I get and how many times can I do that harvest? And then anything that's going to set your team up for success and allows that plant to thrive every single day. I just think about what is my team going to be doing every day and what systems are really important for them and what are not. Epoxy floors are pretty, but they're expensive, and I don't see it as adding a ton of value as like a good system around how to irrigate, because I'm going to be doing that, managing it 24 hours a day. So putting in those systems that your team can also manage, but really tailoring to that plant, because what makes cannabis premium or not is genetics and how you grow and handle it. And optimization of that plant is actually the key to premium.
Can I ask one follow-up? So where would you put LED lighting, the choice of particular manufacturers in the whole scheme of things?
So
And the importance from one lighting manufacturer to the next, and what bearing that's going to have on the outcome of your grow.
yeah, so the question was kind of how would I rate LED manufacturers and like where would I put them?
What do you think,
Well, I've got a controversial opinion here. The horticultural lighting space is in total turmoil and flux because every major horticultural lighting company has been acquired in the last 3 years. So pretty much everybody is a new fixture. Now, what's important when selecting an LED light in general? Of course, cost is a factor. Most of them are getting around to the $600 to $900 delivered amount, which is as much as I would ever recommend anyone paying. Stay away from tunable spectrums. Those are more trouble than they're worth because people are just going to constantly mess with things. And the more things you give your team to mess with, the more they're going to mess with. And then really, it's light uniformity, installation, and the Achilles heel is spectrum. Especially for sole source lighting situations, indoor facilities, spectrum is the most phenotypic driver of the entire system. And so we're a premium brand, we're constantly doing assessments of the spectrum. That's the first thing we're gonna look at when we're choosing a fixture. And it shapes the flower's structure. It's not just about like how much yield does it get, whatever, it's actually like the total expression of its environment, right? That's what plants are basically. And so, what I found is everyone keeps changing their damn spectrum. So that's my first red flag is like with every new fixture, Jen has a totally new spectrum. It's a full start over for our team, from my perspective. So I would do diligence on spectrum, try them in advance if you can, and then try and get comps from other people that have actually bought the product and see if they've had a lot of issues with them, because drivers, fixtures going out can be a big headache in the grow. So like, what is the reliability of the fixture, history of fires, things like that. We screen for all of those kind of attributes when we're looking at light.
Thank you.
Do you have anything to add on that from a design perspective?
Kind of like what you were saying at the end there, I think it was huge. For all your answers are awesome. But yeah, the serviceability is the biggest one I find for like when we actually install a product, pick out the equipment. What's the follow-up service like? Because once it's installed, house installed, making sure you want this, like I said, it's a living, breathing machine. You want to keep it going. If a ballast goes out, or fixture goes out, or light goes out, what are you going to get back in time? If it's someone you got, oh, I got the cheapest thing from China coming over. Okay, you're going to wait all that time to replace it. And then with that too, I think a big one that I always look for people is it's data, understanding all your data. So you want a premium product, how you're going to keep repeating that same product once you did find it. That's why I say like more of indoor than a greenhouse. Greenhouse can fluctuate, but indoor you're going to get the same product over and over again. But on the flip side, I also be able to be careful of too much data, like the death by data, where you get too much information, where it just turns into a standard, like, your engine light's on, like, oh, that light's always on. Like, well, it's on for a reason here. So you got to kind of like keep that going. But data's a big one, and service of the actual equipment, I think, is huge.
Anything to add on that?
Good.
Yeah, I'll double hammer that service of equipment. HVAC in particular is probably, it's like your biggest ticket item and the heartbeat of the facility, and probably the most underestimated on how it impacts all your downstream everyday response. So we have a team that's specialized to service HVAC internally, because it's turned out to be one of those critical things. And one of the things I get asked a lot, like, why did you come to cannabis? And I've always been interested by the plant and the product, but also cannabis is part of something else from my perspective, and it's like the indoor farming revolution. And I also came for that because it's like the one crop that's truly economical today in indoor farming systems, and I wanted to learn the grower side of indoor farming because it's different than the academic side, right? You merge the two together, that's what makes a real operator successful in farming, right? If you can do that, that's what I've seen time and time again, they win. You need to have some weird personalities on your team. Yeah. It's okay, it's just like gotta be in check in the right places, but that creativity is what makes those good teams. And we have definitely determined this, like, you need more than just a farmer, it's a facilities manager, because you're entirely dependent on equipment. Indoor farming is engineering climate with equipment. Yeah. And if you can't engineer your climate, you can't control, and you can't keep it consistent, you can't grow well.
Yeah, if your head grower doesn't show up, okay. If your facilities guy or person doesn't show up, you're actually panicking.
I'd say it's the most important.
Yeah, that's more important. I found that I was always trying to be the head cultivator, run the cultivation, all this stuff, and I quickly realized once I got in leadership positions there that the person that was really running it was the facilities people. Yeah. And that when I did have people leave from the cultivation side, I would bring in the head of facilities to act as the stand-in for cultivator, because they understood how to create the environment and maintain the environment for the plants to thrive. So you need to know the plants, but the plants are going to grow, they're going to try to live. If you have the wrong environment, you're really in trouble. Yeah. We had one more question, and this is probably our last one. Please go. Yeah.
I guess it was a two-part cost question. You mentioned lowest operating costs and highest quality, and Jeff, from your perspective, merging the two. But what would be, is there value in spending a little bit more to integrate systems per se to be able to lower your operating costs? And from an operating cost perspective, where do you see the biggest impact to the production side of cultivation?
Yeah, I mean, for ours, I always tell people, like, especially on the cultivation, in a cultivation, you have the whole facility. The actual cultivation specific equipment, I always tell people, like, don't cut the corners on this one here, because once you start cutting the corners, this is the trickle down effect, it's going to affect the whole growth. So spend a little bit more, your output will obviously improve, your costs will improve on your product alone, your SOPs, understanding everything perfectly. But yeah, on the upfront cost, I say spend a little bit more, you'll get a better product in the end. But then again, don't fall for all that, not all that glitters is gold kind of thing. So, I mean, there's an R&D for a reason, all these things. So if there is something special, maybe check it out first before you integrate into the whole facility if you're going to spend some massive amount. Vet all your equipment perfectly fine, get referrals, get all those case studies are huge. Yeah, that's what I say. Before you spend the money, do your research, but a lot of times spending your money on the actual cultivation itself is definitely worth it.
So don't buy it based on who takes you the nicest dinner?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Just want to make sure everyone knows that one. All right.
If they have some cool swag at their booth, maybe there's something else there too. So.
I just take it as a constant. It's really hard to get good advice in general, but also especially around growing things. It doesn't really matter what industry you're in. It's pretty hard to get good advice, like what's your angle and like how much time you spend, what do you understand? Especially in plants, because they're very honest. Yeah. Right? And so, I'd really think about like how I mentally do it is what is this supposed to impact and what is like the real impact if I had it at the end of the day. It's like what does a water oxygenation system get me? What does that do? How does it affect my plants on every single day? And because then those are like making that investment, the ROI is huge. If the plant rewards you with yield and quality, the ROI on the equipment is pretty much guaranteed. Mm-hmm. Right? When I came in here, I put a totally different filter on my R&D prioritization. I'm like, I'm not looking at cutting costs. I'm going to maximize plant first because it's going to pay for everything in between, But then you really kind of know what does make a difference. And a fertigation system that can do what you need, especially on valve control and pipe distribution, is something to not cheap out on. So I can execute what my plants need on a daily basis because it's every day, 24 hours. How do you actually trigger what does that and why is worth investing in? And HVAC. Like the systems, the service, the risk of breakdown, all those kinds of things, and ultimately your water removal rate is a big thing people underestimate, and it is daily your yield potential. Like that is like, I see that missed and I see it wrong in almost every facility I visit. Because when we go see a facility, if we're looking to take it over, we get all the specs, we run the math, and if your water removal rate's not right, your yield is capped straight away. If your light level's not right, yield is capped straight away, and that's how we like project what I can get out of a facility is those two values. And everyone wants to cheap out on water removal rate because HVAC's already your biggest ticket item.
Yeah, just kind of follow up on that one. Yeah, you talk about the design, making sure the water is all applying that, and your vapor pressure, all that. But pay the extra bucks for your architects, your MEPs, your structural engineer, all that stuff as well too. People that specialize in this group versus my friend will do it for $10,000, or he's a builder. He built our shed in the backyard. He knows what he's doing. Like, get people who specialize in this industry, mainly because they're going to know what you're doing. You're not going to get these mistakes going on in the future. Something that can hurt you. You're saying, like, if you have the bad HVAC, you went the cheap route, it's going to hurt you in the end on that. Another big one to spend your money on that I would say is the automation process. You'll have a lot of growers go, I like the hand growing. One, I think that's a job safety tactic. This way it's their way to do it. But if you get the automation, you'll get the same product over and over again. Like I said, it costs a little bit more, but in the long run, you're going to get that same product. Like I said, you're building a product for the people, not just whatever grows, that's what we're having that day. It's not the soup of the day kind of thing. So you want like the whole process going on. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Are there any, we got about a minute. Are there any other questions? We got maybe time for one more question.
Ian, you said you wouldn't recommend it, but what do you see are some downsides to cultivating a room for a specific product line, say solvents?
Just not being able to pivot in the future. Like, your infrastructure should be looked at as a long-term investment, and then depending on what your company is, what does the product need? But the question would be, like, what do you really need that is that different for, like, let's say if you're talking indoor and you're talking premium flower versus rosin. I mean, like, in our experience, like, the same variables of environmental control, the same needs of the plant are the same. The genetics are pretty dramatically different, but like where the genetics sit is very similar. And then like your post-harvest infrastructure needs tweaking for that in particular, right? Like fast freezing, obviously cold room for extraction. Those things kind of trigger more from my perspective, like the craft. But like if whatever I need to do good premium indoor flower is what I need to do good rosin from my perspective.
It seems like you would be able to attenuate that need. I know I brought it up, but I could top right before flipping, right? And then I'm gonna have more and smaller bud sites, which would lend itself better for extraction as opposed to topping 10 days before I flip, because I want that big top colas and getting those things that I'm able to kind of show off and do premium. It feels like the room would be built the same way, whether I'm pulling it in 49 days or 65 days. What would then change sort of the workflow around and fluxing the people from moving from one stage to another and refilling that room. That's sort of more on the ops, but I've always been fascinated on how to optimize rooms, facilities, and other things for output product. So, but I know that's not on the long game. For the infinite game, that's not the way to play it. So, well, thank you everyone for coming. That concludes the panel. We'll all be around here, I'm sure, the rest of the day. So I want to thank everyone up here for sharing your time and information with us.
Thank you.
And stick around.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up one more time for our third panel. Thank you, gentlemen.